Welcome. My name's Rory. I work for KCTC. That's Kelowna Cooperative Technology Company. Uh, Based out of Kelowna, we offer TV, internet, phone. You probably heard about our fiber network we're building in Washington. We also offer surveillance systems, business telephone systems, IT maintenance, and web design. So lots of technology related products. I myself work in marketing, so it is my job to share the good news about KCTC, and I do that several ways, one of which is in photo editors. So everything from creating a flyer to retouching and a photo for a newspaper release. I do spend quite a bit of time in photo editors, and it's a great way to do art or create anything that you need to use for graphic design. Uh, these programs are often very expensive to use, but one free one is that I want to share with you is called Pixlr. Uh, it is spelled like this, Pixlr, and you just go to pixlr.com to gain access to it. It's very similar to Photoshop if you're familiar with Microsoft Paint. It's like a really robust version of that, but very useful. And today I was going to show you what the tools are, how they are used, and some of the features that you can find in a stronger photo manipulating uh, image editor like Pixlr. So to get there, you just go to pixlr.com. Obviously, put that in your browser up there. When you get to this page, you'll be given two options. So the Advanced Pixlr E and Playful Pixlr X. One is an Express one. Think of Microsoft Paint. The other one is Pixlr E, and we're going to choose that. So from here, this is our front dashboard, and we're going to create a new image. So here we can just tell it how big of an image we're going to make. In this instance, let's just do full high definition. If you're doing something for web, a small icon, specifically for a social media platform, they have some of these presets. This is our standard high definition canvas to start with. So with the scroll wheel, you can zoom in and out. I'll just say that, but now when you see it moving, this grid system is what we see when there is nothing there. This is a completely blank canvas. That does not mean that it is white. It means that it's completely see-through. And we can tell because we see this grid system. So from now on, every time we see that, we'll know that there is nothing there. It's very useful when you're saving things for a website where you want the website background to show and not a generic color. But this is the interface. I'll just give you a quick tour around. An important box over here is our layers. So this is our base layer, layer 1. We can add and adjust our arrangement of our layers once we get started. We do that here. This is a handy navigational panel, especially when you're zoomed way in on something. You can use this navigational panel to get to where you want to make your edits at. Over here is our tool panel, and we'll go through these tools and see exactly how they all function, and obviously our toolbar at the top. So to begin, we can either bring in an image, start with an image. There's some stock libraries available through Pixlr you can use, or you can even just get a URL from an image that you found on a website and type it in there. Today we're just going to open one. So I have a few images set aside here for this. It's a group photo of the KCTC staff, and we'll say open. And this is what we'll typically see, and we'll just use this as an example for how we go through and explain these tools. First up is this arrange tool. This is going to be your meat and potatoes, what you use most of the time. It's how you select things. When you select an individual layer. Next to that, we have a rectangular marquee selection, and these image editors all function in the same way that you can change things and you tell it which things to change using selections. So for instance, I've created this box around the group, and they call this the marching ants. That is what is selected, and to show that, I will switch to the brush tool quickly. And you can see that when I make a brush stroke, it only applies to the area that I have selected. I'm going to hit Control Z, that's Command Z on a Mac to undo our brush strokes, and also Control D, which will deselect that. We can also go to the Select and deselect here to do that. Next we have the Lasso Select. Works very much like the rectangular marquee tool, only now we're allowed to actually freehand draw, similar to how a lasso would go around whatever you want to grab. This does the same thing. So now our marching ants is not a rectangle, but a custom shape that we've created. You'll often see some additional options for the tool you're using up here at the top. This one is the freehand. Polygon is a more click a series of times to create the shape you want, similar to this. And when you get to the end, enter on the keyboard. We'll confirm your selection. So again, I'll hit Control D, Command D on a Mac to deselect that. Here we have the wand select. Now this allows the computer to make its best judgment on what you're trying to select. In this instance, we will say that this blue stripe is what we want to select. And so we can click that with our magic wand tool. And you notice here that the shade of blue changed with the shadow, and it did not choose that. So when I picked this color, it chose everything that was close to that color. If we change this tolerance setting up here to be more tolerant, I'm going to deselect, and I click this again, you'll see that it has now included this darker shade of blue as well. But still, it was so different from the surrounding colors that it was not selected. So this is a quick and easy way to gain an accurate selection on something that's definable on our image. Control D to deselect that, and I'm zooming out. Next we have a crop tool. This is very similar to how you've utilized any crop tool in the past. It is similar to taking scissors and just resizing our image to that. Hitting enter on your keyboard confirms those changes. Control Z to undo. Cutout and mask tool is very useful to hide or reveal things. So for instance, if I were to draw this square around us, it has masked the rest of the image. Now it is still there, it is just hidden. We could go up here to remove from mask option, and if I were to draw a square here, add to mask selection, you can see that it adds that section back. So all that picture still exists, it's just hidden. This is very useful when there's something individual that you're trying to add to an image, but erase is very destructive in that we can't get that information back, where a mask allows us to make slight adjustments. So I'll zoom in here and show you an example. If I were to paint this back in, and I've just changed our mask tool to a brush versus the shape, and you can see as I paint over areas of the mask, it reveals what was underneath. That's very useful if we were just wanting one individual person. We could mask out everything else and have just this. Have just this individual revealed. But if we'd gone too far on accident, for instance like this, we didn't notice it right away, like if we'd used an eraser tool, and then later we came back and realized that we had taken away too much. And with the eraser tool, that would be gone. Now we could always just add to mask and bring back that information to refine our changes. But that's the mask tool in a quick and dirty way of explaining it. There are some other options. That lasso, like we showed you with the selection, works very similar, and the gradient mask, and we'll get into gradients down here in the toolbar a little later. I'm just going to undo our changes here and have some fun with the Liquify tool. So I'm going to bring in another image. This is myself. This is Kelly Grout, a sales and customer service employee at KCTC, and this is our boss, Casey Peck. She's the general manager at KCTC. The Liquify tool is, imagine if our picture was Play-Doh and we wanted to squish things and move things around. This is a lot of fun when it comes to image manipulation. You hear of people saying, oh, that image was photoshopped because that guy's muscles aren't really that big. This is where the Liquify tool comes into use. Here we have push, enlarge, shrink, swirl left, swirl right, and restore. The enlarge works like this. I will make our brush a little bit bigger, but everything that we use this tool on gets increasingly bigger from the center out. And so if we wanted to give myself a big bunch of muscles without all the hard work of going to the gym, we could do so like that. Of course, that does look absurd, but maybe even Casey would like some big pythons here. That is how that is achieved. I'm just going to undo these. The shrink works the same way, just the exact opposite. So there's lots of fun to be had with this one, obviously. And push. Just runs like a smear. If I wanted to push things individually, you can manipulate things that way. So that's the Liquify tool. Like I said, lots of fun to play with that one. Next we have the heal tool. This is very useful for doing quick changes that you'd like to make to an image. For instance, if Kelly no longer worked with us, we could just that easily remove her emblem. Same with myself in this patch here. You're essentially telling the computer that whatever I'm painting with this brush is what I don't want. Can you please make the best decision you can of what's around it and what would look like if it wasn't there? So this is not exactly the cleanest. It really depends on what is surrounding whatever you're trying to edit. So for this logo, it's just black around. It's very easy for the computer to see that and fill in that information with its surroundings. Turn that off. And this is the clone and stamp tool. Very similar to the heal tool, only it allows you to decide what gets replaced. So a good example would be this tire here. If we choose source first and choose an area of our image, we'll say grass here. And as soon as I've clicked on the image, you'll see that that changes to paint. And now when I click on this, important thing just happened. Over on our layers, you have to have the layer selected that you'd like to manipulate. I had the earlier image selected, so my changes weren't happening. We'll try this again on our new layer. With source selected, I will choose some grass. It switches to paint, and now when I paint the tire, you can see we get two kind of cursors. One is our source cursor, where we've chosen what we're going to paint with, and the cursor that we normally use now paints with the actual image itself. Now, this is very useful when you want to remove something from the background. You don't really have anything good, but consider this tree back here. I will go ahead, choose some of this random foliage, and we can paint over here. We have gotten rid of the tree part. I can change back to source and pick this section of road right here. And you can see there, now our tree is gone. Very useful and powerful tool. These next ones are more specific to certain tools. A blur, sharpen, and smudge. They do exactly what you think. Blur is useful in the background where you don't want to draw too much attention to where they at, but more the subject. And so we can use this blur tool to take away the details of our background. Is one useful way to use the blur tool. If you want to impart that someone is moving, you can blur a certain object like a vehicle going by. Sharpen and smudge work very similar. Next we have the dodge and burn. This is useful when there is a certain dark or light area. The brush will do the exact opposite. So in this instance we are set to lighten mode. We can see that these pants down here are a little dark. If we use the lighten tool of the dodge and burn function, we can increase the lights of the lights, or we could increase the darks of the darks. So it does so selectively without reacting to the others. Sponge and color, very similar in that it does a specific job. It only affects a certain thing. So vibrance makes colors more colorful, but it's smart enough to know that skin colors should not be made more orange. So grass becomes greener, blue clothes become bluer, but smart enough to know not to make the orange in our skin color more orange. And if we were to do saturation, we would get that. Saturation is a version of vibrance that just affects everything generally, and temperature. Next we have a pen tool. It does exactly what you think it does. It colors like a pen. Right now it's set to white on our color palette, and the variant is sketchy. Plain is exactly what you think it is. Sketchy adds some more distortion to the line, and there are several different versions of the line that you can create available here. Crayon, for instance, looks like it was drawn with a crayon. Coming up next is the brush tool. Very, very useful one you use a lot of times. It's what we use for masks. We can change our brush with this little drop down menu here. So we can adjust them individually, the size of it, how fuzzy or how sharp it is. This step is how many times is it leaving ink as it moves along. I like to leave it set at 0, especially for a dark brush or a solid brush such as this one. The softness is very useful to keep just a little bit of softness in it, especially when you're working with images. It will allow you to blend things because in a normal image, things do not have real sharp and jaggedy edges. Moving on is the eraser tool. It works like a brush does. Here we have the eraser tool, and it works like you would expect it to. If we turn our top layer on here and select it in our layers panel, and we use the eraser tool just like that mask does, only now I have nothing to selectively replace that with if I have gone too far. So you see the eraser tool is powerful, but also can work to our detriment just as it does to our benefit. Moving on, we have a color replace tool. This one is an awful lot of fun. If I turn this layer off, go back to our background image, we're all wearing blue shirts. Real quick way to make a change to this, using our color replace tool. What we start on is what it knows to change. And so when I click down and the center of our cursor is on blue, it knows that whatever I paint over that is blue or some version of blue to replace the color. And again, we have that tolerance setting here where if we have this set super low and we change we start to get these artifacts that pop up where the next shade of blue is just outside the range of what we told the computer was acceptable. And so you change that with this tolerance setting. And I like to go about 30% tolerance. It seems to grab everything that's similar without making any changes to the colors around it. So that's a fun tool, real quick and easy way to make changes to an image. The paint bucket tool, this works just like you would think the paint bucket tool in Paint or whatever would. Whatever you put it on, it will fill, and we can tell it to do contiguous, which just means all the same color that is connected to what I've clicked on, or non-contiguous, which if I click this gray, it will also move the gray over on this truck as well. So the gradient tool. So if we wanted to make a background, for instance this, we would add a new layer. We'll make it empty. We can move this underneath. I have black and white selected as my colors right now. If I were to change those here in our color picker tool, KCTC's colors are a blue and a green. That's close enough. We have our gradient tool. I'm going to pick the colors that I've chosen. And from this point where I start will be our blue. And from this point where I end, I want to be green. And everything in the middle is just a blend of the two. So it's a very useful tool for creating a background, or if you wanted to make that mask, we will choose our picture. That gradient mask works just the same way. So I want a gradient of half that picture to show, and it will gradually mask the rest. But that is how a gradient works. Moving on to our shape tool. squares, circles, rounded rectangles, triangles, stars, and shapes. You see that this is green with a blue outline. That is because we have a stroke set to our shape. If I would turn this stroke down, now there is no stroke around it. Moving on to our text tool, another one that you will use a whole lot. Here we'll begin with add text, and we'll say KCTC team. There are lots of ways to adjust this, make it exactly what we want it to do. For instance, we can change the font that we use. Here I will use something that's a little bit thicker. These are all preloaded into Pixlr for you to choose from. Several different options. I will pick a color that is easier to read, something that's a little bit better to stand out in the background. And another way we can change that is with our styles. If we click that drop down, we have a few toggles to choose from. This background puts color behind our text. This next one outlines our text here, and so that works very well for making things stand out. We make the background black, for instance, and also increase the thickness of the outline. You can see that stands out much better. Another thing we can do is add a drop shadow. You can see there's a little bit of a shadow. If I take those outlines away, now you can see that shadow in there. We can change the color of our shadow, more black. And it's kind of a blurry shadow. We can make it way blurry or not blurry at all, so it'll be a very crisp, as if it was just away from whatever surface it was casting a shadow on. Here we can adjust the vertical, horizontal, and opacity. Just means how much we can see through it. So we can make it very dark. And there you have it. So that works well to make anything stand off the screen, or if you're doing a invitation or a flyer, these are very useful tool. The size of our text can be adjusted here. Here we can get our alignment settings, our line space, for instance, dictates how far apart our lines of text are. Letter space dictates how far apart our letters are. A few alignment options down here: left, right, justify, center, justify. We can make things automatically all uppercase. This font does it by default. We have italicized, and we can bolden things. So a very useful tool. Moving on, our color picker tool. And so with this selected, we can choose any color that is already in our image as the image we want to use to paint. If you understand color theory, you'll know that some colors work better together, and so by default Pixlr offers you these color scheme choices of all things that would be a complementary or a contrasting color. A zoom tool which works independently from the scroll wheel. If you don't like that, you can hold. We also got the zoom out option as well as some quick adjust options that you can use to gain the perspective and viewpoint you need. The hand tool just works as to move things around. The shortcuts for all these tools exist in this program as well. So, for instance, if I have this selector tool, but I hold the space bar, as long as I'm holding the space bar, the cursor will work as the, what's this called? The hand pan tool. As long as I hold the space bar, the hand pan tool is what is active. V would go back to the move tool. If you hover over these tools, you can see at the tool tip, we'll give it the keyboard shortcut is. And those do make things much easier and quicker as you navigate through these image editing programs. It'll become second nature. We can switch our color palette back and forth. Selecting colors is as simple as clicking on the color itself. You can input a specific color if it's what you're needing. You can adjust the hue, saturation, or red, green, blue balance. Some other useful features can be found in this adjustment options up here. Very similar to all the tools that you have in the toolbar over here. You can do things slightly different way with the adjustment settings here. So as an overall, if our picture was dark, we could overall adjust the exposure to increase the brightness. Adjust the temperature and tint. So for instance, this picture looks a bit orange and yellow. Probably had some light bulbs in there that were causing that. If we needed to use this for something, we could decrease the warmth or the temperature of this image, adding a little bit of blue, which equals out the whites in here and gives us a more neutral image. I think that's going to be about it. The important thing is to understand that each one of these tools will have several different options at the top. All can be adjusted independently to give you the exact effect you're looking for. When you've used them all to their full potential, there are really just an infinite number of possibilities of way that you could create your images. There's a lot more effects that you could do to your images using these filter library. Help section has YouTube tutorials that will explain very specifically individual tools or projects. So you can start with a project that you need to do and then use the tools that help you accomplish that project to help you better understand this program. But really using it is the best way to learn it. And it is not difficult at all. All these things work very much like you would expect them to. Oftentimes it's just the names of the tools that confuse, but for the most part, it is a very easy and fun program to use when I'm not creating flyers and advertisements. I've spent some time doing image manipulations of my own as a graphic artist, as a way that I enjoy to spend my time. Here I've got a couple I can show you of what you can achieve with these image editing softwares. My children are typically the subject of mine when I want to take a picture of them doing specifically what I need them to do or in a certain position. They are my willing subjects. But as you can see, there's really no limit to what you can achieve. Your imagination will be the deciding factor, and I, I think everybody has it in them to do some really amazing art. I hope you learned something useful in our tour of Pixlr, the free photo editor, available at www.pixlr.com. Again, my name is Rory from KCTC. Thank you guys so much for allowing us to be part of your day-to-day. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate. You can always reach me at marketing@kctc.net or call us at 319-656-3668. You can ask for Rory, and I would love to answer any questions that you have. Thanks once again. Stay safe.